G'day, welcome to Streetneat. Today I'm going to show you some really basic metal shaping, but more importantly I'm going to show you that this is pretty simple stuff that even someone with zero experience, given the right direction, can do. So the first thing we're going to do, what we're going to make today is this. So some of you might have already seen the headlight bucket mount that I made yesterday on Facebook and Instagram. So this is the one that I made yesterday. This is sort of what it starts life as. It's normally a rusted out section in the front of the mudguard of an FEFC, and we're lucky enough that we actually have a new old stock one. So these are normally welded into the front of the mudguard and around the headlight area, and then the headlight bucket, which is this, mounts inside the mount there, of course, and that's what holds your headlight in. So we have our coronavirus contained, just in case anyone was wondering. So the first order of business is to start with a piece of cold rolled steel. I normally use zinc anneal because it's not normally rusty, but the cold rolled steel for this is actually going to be quite easy to work with. But the first thing we need to do is clean it up with a little bit of dioxidine. So dioxidine is just phosphoric acid. Just put on a little bit, and you'll be astounded at how quickly it chews away the rust. And that way we're starting with some nice clean steel. I'll just leave that eat into there for a few minutes, and we'll fast forward to what it looks like. As you can see, that's coming up pretty quickly. It's nice and clean. I'll use a Scotch Brite to get the worst of the rust off. And if you need to, the deeper seated stuff, you can use a wire wheel. So this is all stuff that you can do in your own workshop. Okay, with the acid on and it's eating the rust away, this all happened in a matter of about 30 seconds. We just wipe it down with a rag. Now to neutralise the acid, if you leave it like this, it'll just leave a white phosphoric coating. So just use a bit of water. This is our precious bottled water, and neutralise the acid with a bit of water, and you can dry that off and it's good to go. Now what will happen here is we've now got a nice clean surface that we can measure and scribe our lines on. Rightio, now we're all set to get going. I have with me, finally, it's showing up to work here, is Harold. He's my stunt double. He takes on all the jobs that I can't take on physically anymore. Now Harold has no metal shaping or panel beating experience, so what we're going to do is get him going straight away. Alright Harold, if you want to measure that one up and tell me what the measurements are, I'll scroll it down. So Harold's measuring the sample new old stock one. What do you got there, Harold?
90.
90, right, and measure the inside flange. Find the widest point.
20.
20, all right, so we've got 90, 20, and when you went to school, how much is that?
110.
110. Now we like a little bit of wiggle room, so we're going to go +5, and so what we might do is make that one +5, and the 20, we might just make that a generous 20. We might make it like a bit like 22. So we're going to have 95 and say 22. Now that will take into account the steel thickness, which is around about 1 mil, 1.2. Okay, Harold, if you want to measure that out onto the steel there. So go 95. And take note of how Harold's doing this. Just using the scribe and the rule. 95. Yep, good 8. Alright, join those two lines together. And as you can see, it's not about speed, it's about accuracy. Yeah, just one line will do, otherwise you end up with a draggy line. Right, now add your 22 on top of that line. So the advantage of having Harold here is that his eyes work a lot better than mine, and he's dead accurate on levels. Now I'm putting the pressure on you, Harold. So 22. Right, and as you can see, by having the acid on the piece of steel, and every time we scribe on it, it's now actually making life just a little bit easier to see our marks. Some people use bearing blue. I don't do that stuff here, can't be bothered with it. Right, join that line together, Harold. Yep, just once across like that. Now turn the whole thing upside down, around the other way, grab your piece, and if we call that hole the center mark, just let's see how much, and what you're going to do is you're going to roll it from side to side to see how far it's going to come. So basically it'll allow us to make it up to about that hole there, and it'll allow us to make it up to about there. So that's going to be plenty of meat to make up a top section. When these rust out, this is how much normally rusts. It's normally an area a bit smaller than what we're making, so we make something a bit larger than what we actually need. Okay, now Harold's going to cut it. Alrighty, yeah, Harold's just going to cut it out on our bench shears here. And don't let it tilt, just keep it nice and straight. So the secret to doing this is I was just explaining to Harold. Now feed it forward and let it use the blade as a guide. And you'll notice that we set up the Hikoki torch here, so we've got some way of shining some light onto the scribed edge, because that picks it up just beautifully. Once again, it's not about speed, it's about accuracy. So Harold's got a really good master on this. He's not actually used this before, so that's going pretty good. These things can be a little bit tricky if you're not used to them. He's done a spot on job there. Alright, yeah. Just pull it down and finish it off. Now, by doing a series of shallow cuts, you'll notice, can you just turn that up on edge, Harold? You'll notice that there's no kinks in it. If you were to pull the blade all the way through and all the way down each time, it will kink the steel. Okay, now we're up to the next exciting part. We're actually going to fold this. To now put the 90-degree fold that's going to make the inner lip. Now he's just putting it into the magnum bend. The magnum bend is an electric bender, and it has a magnetic clamp that holds the clamping bar down. He's just going to make sure that he's got his 22mm, and he seems to be happy with that. All right, put the ruler down. Now he's just doing some final adjustments there. All right, and how this works is you keep your fingers well out of it, put your finger on the button, turn your hand off and start pulling. Keep pulling hard and go up to 90 degrees. Now 90 degrees is going to be shown on that. Keep going up, keep going up. 90 degrees, keep going up to where it says 90. The light's not being very cooperative here. Go a tiny bit further. Yep. And a little bit further, we'll have the spring back. Okay, take it out of the machine. And Harold's going to show the camera what we have. We have a piece of steel with a 90-degree bend in it. Now, the most exciting part happens here. We go over to the shrinker stretcher. So what Harold's going to do here, he's going to make a chalk template using the original, and I'll explain a little bit more about how he's going about doing this. So what he's doing is he's holding the chalk flat against the template, so the chalk doesn't tuck under the piece and make the circle a bit smaller. And he's been very good at holding it nice and steady. If you get it wrong, well, it's only chalk, you just start again. So he's done a pretty good job there. Now, once again, keep in mind that Harold's not actually done anything like this before. So he has a pretty good mechanical aptitude and pretty good sense of being able to take direction. So you don't have to be Einstein to do this stuff, but it sure helps. No, it doesn't really. Okay, let's have a look at your chalk line. Okay, oh, what a beautiful chalk line. Now that is going to be the pattern that we use to make sure that we bend this to the right shape. Okay, Harold, now which way are you going to bend that, Harold? Okay, and that's because you are making this edge here. So this is going to be the flange edge, that's the flange edge, that's the flange edge. Now we've made a little center mark, which I didn't show before, and that way we can have a center point to work from. That center point is actually going to become this hole here. So righto, Harold, feeding it into the shrinking jaws. And starting on the center line, Harold's going to put it in at full depth. And I'll probably just hang on to the machine here because he's not used to it rock and rolling. Now what this does, it's a set of jaws that come down and squeeze the metal together. That's shrinking. So metal does three things. It stretches. It doesn't do that very easily at all. It shrinks. And it can do that, as you can see, with a little bit of effort. And the third thing is sheet metal. It does nothing at all. So basically, just working his back way along there, back to the center point. He will go all the way to the other end. And he's starting to get a bit of a swing for it now. This is Harold's first time of using this machine. So, right, Harold, can you, after you've done that, just go back through to the center again as you were. Now what Harold's doing, he's going over the little bumps. Keep going, Harold. I'm just doing a bit of a close-up here. So this particular set of jaws is gathering up the steel pretty quickly, and basically, right, can you just pull that out and we'll show the camera how much, now tip it up on its edge, no, towards the camera, that's it, no, other way, hey, now you see it's making a happy face. This is what we do here at Streetneat, we just bend steel and make happy faces. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll get Harold put it back in the machine, and I'm going to show you how you can speed up this process. Now, as I explained to Harold, if you pull the metal out halfway on this flange, that's a 22mm flange, and you give that a bit of a go on the pedal now, you'll see, you watch how quickly it pulls the steel around. That starts to pull it around real quick. Now just stop for a sec there, Harold. Now the disadvantage of doing that is it's doing this. It's actually pulling the steel away from itself. We will fix that shortly with a hammer, but when Harold wants to get a bit more aggressive with the bending so he can match the profile that we've made on the bench, he will probably do an alternation between deep and shallow bending. The shallow bending will pull that around very quickly, and the deep clamping will help iron out the difference. And that was a little bit of a burp grunt from Harold. Okay, so throw it back in the machine, Harold, and just keep on going. Now remember where you're up to. Don't ever lose track of where you're up to, and just keep doing that. I'm just hanging onto the machine there. I should have the machine bolted down to the ground, but we're not doing that just at the moment. Okay, we'll fast forward this process a little bit. So Harold's still working away on this. It hasn't taken too long. He's just constantly checking how the curve's going. So he's decided that one end needs a bit more than the other, and now he's going to pull it out and he's going to check it to the Right, so what he's going to do now, he's going to put it and check it on the bench, and he'll get a bit of an idea. So the line that he'd be looking for, he can use both lines, but the way he's doing it here works as well. And as you can see, he's not going too bad. The gap here and the gap there is roughly the same, so you centralize it out, and you'll notice that in the middle, the curve's not going too bad. So you've got two things you can do. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They'll concentrate bending this, which will pull this in. But then what you're going to end up with is that's going to have a nice curve in it, and this is going to have a great big flat spot. So always work evenly. If you're doing 2 runs this way, find your center point, do 2 runs that way. Don't be tempted to just keep working one area unless you're going up to the center point. So if you want to get one side right, then get the other side right, you can do that. But honestly, it will muck you right up. It'll do your head in. Now, the other problem that we're having, and this is very typical of bending, is that you notice it's not staying at 90 degrees anymore. So Harold's going to show us how it fixes that. So he's taken the panel hammer. So he's just giving it a bit of a tap down. And he's keeping that pressure pretty even. And when he thinks he's getting close, he'll stop and check it. So you'll notice this is me giving him subtle direction. Harold has never done this before. I've never trained him in it. No one else has trained him in it. So you're literally seeing someone learn on the job. Right. Now, there's a little bit of a problem that we've got. Harold just got his learning that if you hit too hard on the end, you're going to distort it. So what we'll do, we've got a nice bit of steel here, and we'll put it there, hang it over the edge, and so what he's going to do is probably I'll just hold that for him. You just hold that there. So I'm hitting hammer off dolly there a little bit. Now pull that back, so that's, hold that up a bit. Right. Now this is sheet steel, so it's pretty forgiving stuff, as long as you don't let it get out of control. So now Harold can check. You grab the piece of steel, Harold. Just keep checking against your circle and just seeing how you're going. And now, all that straightening out has actually pulled this back straight again. So it's a little bit of a fight between shrinking and keeping this at 90 degrees. Trust me, you will get there. It's not impossible. Looking at this, it's nice and flat. Looking at that, that could probably do with a little bit more bending in. And if we're looking at this, that's actually not going too bad. And I'll show Harold how to tidy up these ends here a little bit. But that's just a little bit of hammer and dolly work. When we come to make this headlight section up, these ends will probably get trimmed up anyhow. So don't panic too much about the ends, because we're making it bigger than what we actually need. Okay, we'll let Harold go on with the shrinking and pulling it into shape. It's going to show you how to do a little bit of quick fine tuning. Harold's gone a tiny bit deep in a couple of spots, nothing at all serious on the shrinker, and it's leaving some little dents right on the very edge. So what Harold's going to do is, we've got this piece of steel here, which is an old bearing case. Harold, just find us the center point on the edge. Now take notice of that noise, and I'll just simply slip the steel in, and where are we going to repair? There's not much to repair. Looks like that spot right there. So you keep your arm onto that. Right. So Harold's the hammering machine for me. Okay, you hit that down. Right, now hear that metallic sound? That means he is hammer on dolly, and he has just successfully ironed that wee bump out of it. So that's a little bit of fine tuning. Okay, now I think Harold's got it right, so take it out of the machine, Harold. And this has been a lot of backwards and forwards, but how are we looking? Not looking too bad. So looking down our chalk line, I would say, looking at that, it's even there. Whoops, I'll just hit it. Well, that is not at all bad by anyone's standard. So Harold has just effectively made that shape. So the other thing we're going to do is we can take the template and we can put it inside, and Harold, you pick that up and you just tell me how close it looks to being right as far as the flange goes. Don't worry about the top. Now what Harold's going to look for is any air gaps down around the side, and look how snug that's fitting. It's not going to fit snug in the middle because we've got a little return there, but overall that is spotty dog. You got to be pleased with that. So we're going to go and have a cup of tea, and we'll come back to it. Now it's really important when you're doing these projects that you stop and have a cuppa, because it lets you catch up, lets your brain relax a little bit, and you're not rushing the job. It's not about the speed, it's about the quality. Rightio, we've got the shape that we want now of the headlight section. So basically what Harold's going to do is we're just going to modify our template a little bit. So he's just taking a measurement of a returned edge on the top of it, and we're going to straighten that returned edge out on the template, and that way we can fit the template inside the piece we've made. Right, so we've straightened out the returned edge, which is actually a mount for the headlight bezel. Harold's just sat his template inside the piece he's made, and now it fits in there rather snugly. So we'll take a Sharpie and we'll make a mark. This is where having someone help you does make it a bit easier. Of course you can do this yourself, you would just normally clamp it. So we'll make sure we've got a nice mark there. Now the other thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the holes, and that way we'll come back to the same spot every time, and we won't go too far wrong. Okay, so what we're going to do, take that out of there now. So there's our shape of what Harold's going to cut out with a pair of tin snips. Right, I like a little bit of extra meat. We've already given it 5mm extra, now we're going to give it a little bit more. So Harold's just going to cut, probably with some difficulty. You need to have reasonably developed muscles for that. Now don't try and cut the whole thing out, just cut right around and cut that piece off, and then come back and have another nibble at it. This is where people make mistakes when you're making intricate shapes. You end up destroying the shape because cutting curved things will often pull the metal back out of shape. So Harold's just going to have a couple of nibbles at this, and have another crack at it. Harold, just cut that bit off, and then what we'll do, we'll come back and we'll do a final cut, and we'll trim that up. Okay, so rather than bore you to death showing how we're going to do this, we'll just get on and do it. Harold is just coming through and doing the final trim up. Once again, he's not used these tools before, so everything's a little bit new and strange, but not too hard. So probably last time we had to use scissors on things was in school, cutting out cardboard shapes. Growing up now, so you get to use metal. So that's going pretty good, and he'll do the final touch up with a grinder or a lynching belt. Right, and come back and do the other side, Harold. So Harold's just staying just slightly off the line. Always give yourself a little bit of extra meat. So these things can be a little bit tricky if you've not done it before. Now you notice that the waist side, how we're cutting this, is that the waist side is the side that's got all the stress on it, not the job side. And you've got to think about these things when you're doing cutting. If Harold was to start cutting in from that direction, he'd be putting the stress onto the job, whereas this direction he's putting the stress onto the waist side, not onto the job side. yeah, Harold's just trimming it up, the final bit. Plain beards, fake beards. So he's just bringing it up to the line. Get on the appropriate safety gear. And a bit of a check here and there. Yep, doing good. Rightio. All done, eh? Alright, so Harold's just finished cleaning up the piece, and he's just going to check it against the sample. Just want to check that against the sample, Harold. So yeah, just tip it up and let us have a look. Pick the hole up and have a look. Get it in the centre, line the holes up. Yeah, try it on the other way, it goes on the back side. Now, when you are doing templates, just be aware of the thickness of the steel. So that's all looking pretty good. So we make things to the outside, and the reason we make it to the outside, it will come out slightly bigger. Slightly bigger we can deal with. Slightly smaller becomes a pain in the bum. You can reduce the thing in size, you can't add to it. Okay, so what Harold's going to do now, he's just going to make, I'm just going to hand him the pen, and he's just going to make a mark on the edge, as I've instructed him. And he's just holding the pen carefully in his fingers, using his finger as a depth gauge. And he's just going to pull a line through. As you can see, his beautifully clean manicured fingernails there. He's pulling a line right through to the other side. We've checked that there's no sharp edges on it. And this is going to be a guideline for the wheel. We're going to put a little swage line on here, so this is just a rough line for him to follow. So once again, he's not done this sort of stuff before, so if the line's a bit wobbly, don't panic about it. So it's all a learning process. I'm just going to make a little swage line here. You can do this with a pair of pliers, you don't have to have a swage wheel. I'm just doing a little swage line here because this piece has a returned lip on the outside. This is just a little bit of extra detail, not super critical. You don't have to do things like this, but I'm pretty pedantic. I like to make sure that the things are spot on. I wasn't going to throw Harold in the deep end of this one as such because it's not a crucial thing, but he could easily make a bit of a mess of the patch if we were to get him to learn on this one. I didn't have anything else for him to practice on, so I thought it's just easier that I do this one myself. So the line was just to act as a bit of a guide, and if we have a look on the inside, you can see just basically a little bit of a line there where it went. Okay, so Harold's just marking out the holes with the center punch. He's just making sure that that the thing's got, okay, we'll just tip this up and you can do that one. Up in the center, yep. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to drill the holes, and then we'll put the little bend, return bend that needs to go there. And then we're just about done on this, and I'll show you a little tricky tool that we've made. But Harold's going to do a little bit of metal finishing in here, and so that'll be the next step after drilling the holes. Okay, so Harold is just drilling out the holes. These holes are for the clips, and we're going to make some clip recesses. So it's a 6mm hole, so we're not too worried about doing centre top marks. Right, punch that baby through here. And make sure we hang on to it. Right, after a brief hiatus of trading farts in here, Harold's going to do some metal finishing. What he's going to do is just going to take the teeth marks off from the shrinking jaws, and that'll clean this up. won't bore you with that whole process, and I can't spin you for much longer because his ass spin. Okay, so Harold's just sanded all the inside of this. Can you just show us the piece now, Harold? So if you ever wonder how we get beautiful finished jobs on in our photos, and myself, like many other metal finishers, we make sure that we put online stuff that's going to look good. And one of the secrets to making things look good in photos is to finish it with a DA sander or an orbital sander, a bit of 80 grit, and basically we're now ready to sort of move on with the final formation of this. We're going to put a little bit of shape up in here, and you saw before that we did some measuring on how much to bend that up by. So we're going to use the sample as the guide. We'll make a line through there, and then we're just simply going to bend that up with a pair of pliers. What Harold's doing is he's made a bit of a line here, and just bending this up to around about 6 mils. And I've given him instruction to go very gentle on the bending. You just do it gradually. So if you don't do it gradually, you end up with a whole heap of plier marks on the other side, which you don't really want. So, and okay, just stop there for a second. So what we're going to do is we're just going to check, we'll put the straight edge back across there, and we'll know in shortly if we've bent that up. So that's 6 mil above the height of the rest of the body. So we just keep on bending away there, Harold. Now this cold roll steel is nice and easy to work with. If we were trying to do this with zinc anneal, it would be a lot more of a challenge. Zinc anneal is what I'm normally used to working with. Alright, so it might be time to do a bit of a measure. Harold's just doing a measurement of depth. So what he's looking for is an even gap all the way along, and just making sure it's 6 mil, which it is. He made a grunting noise to affirm that it was 6 mil. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to explain a little bit more about these dimples and the tool I made. What I did is I got a piece of flat bar stock, and I made this shape first, and to do that I put it, I just basically, I can do stuff by eye, so some people can, some people can't, and I shaped all around that by eye with on a finishing belt. And then I've made so this is your male part and this is your female part of the die, and basically one fits inside the other. A couple of bolts to line it up, and then we've got, I use a drill piece to act as a guide pin, and I've got a line across here which tells me that's where I need to line up the edge of the metal to, because we only want the dimple to be that big, we don't want it to be all that big. So this part of the tool is just actually to help locate it so it doesn't move around. So how this is going to work is I'll just put a couple of 8mm set screws in place. So, and I'll leave them loose enough that we can actually lift that up and put the piece of metal in. Okay, Harold, can you load that up for us? So he's just going to do one here. I'm showing him how to load it up. Now, it's just going to use the drill piece to act as a guide. That drill piece doesn't stay in there, right? So he's got it over the hole in the anvil. Flies have been a bit persistent today. Alright, so now he'll tighten that up with the spanner first before removing the drill bit. And we'll just nip it up, just so not too tight to begin with. And it looks like that thread's starting to get a little bit ordinary. Okay, so that's the back one tightened. Now they're only just nipped up. Now just nip up that front one a little bit, And now you can take the drill piece out, because if you make it too tight the drill piece won't come out. Right, now Harold had to make sure that he's lined up the line on both sides of the headlight piece there, and as you can see that's nicely lined up. Okay Harold, just finish tightening up that front bolt. So we're being very careful here not to move too many things. So do that one up as tight as you like, and the one in behind it. So the reason we went a little bit light first was just so we can make sure that we've got everything in the right spot. Final check. Yep, we're still pretty good. Okay, so take the ball peen hammer, that's that one over there. And what you're going to do, as I'm just going to hang on to this, is you're going to smack it without smacking. Okay. Now just check to see that you got the depth that you want. Is that deep enough, do you think? Just looking at that, I reckon you give it a bit more of a smack on this side, Harold. Okay, Harold's not done this one before, so he's not too sure as to how much pressure to put on it. I reckon that's about right. Okay, undo it and let's have a look to see where we're at. Now, if you've not done this before, obviously have a practice on some test pieces. Don't try and practice on the job that you're trying to finish. And looking at that, that's pretty good. Now pick it up and show the camera. So that's not too bad. That's a first attempt. Now one of the things is, I'll just put the tool down, is that this will have a slight, let the camera focus, it'll have a slight bow upwards. And you just take the camera, Harold, and how we fix that is basically this is very, very light, and then that's just now made that a nice flat surface. And this is a sort of clip that will go in here in due course, and as you can see that's a beautiful, beautiful fit. So we'll carry on and make these other ones. Piece now, and he's just checking it for final fit and just making sure that all the holes are all lined up and the dimples are lined up. That's absolutely spot on. Now the only other thing we've got to do now is just put that in there, Harold, just put it back again. So the very last part of the job, now we've made all this, is we're just going to get a pen and we're going to make the cutouts. We're just going to draw a line around where these cutouts are going to be, and the reason for that is that on a finished one you see the cutouts, and what they do is they locate the headlight bucket. Now if you don't have the cutouts, the headlight bucket could just go anywhere, so this is to make a positive indentation, and then that's pretty much the job finished. Rightio, so we've made our marks with pen, so we've got the same cutouts as the original, and what we're going to do is we're going to find a grinder, which will be this one here, and we're just going to hog that out just with a flap disc, and because of the noise the machine makes, we won't try and video and do that. We might try a little bit of it, but it's going to be a bit noisy. Okay. Now Harold's just finished making his thing there, and he's just lining up the headlight bucket just to see that everything fits, and looking at the holes, that hole, and that hole is bang on. Now because we made this piece to the outside, it's going to come out slightly larger, and that's something to take into account. If you make it to the inside, it'll come out slightly smaller. So what we've got is we've got a beautiful even gap. You just tilt that down so I can see that. So we've got a beautiful even gap all the way around this headlight bucket, so it's not tight and it's not fighting against it. On the first one that I've made, I made it a little bit smaller simply by going through and running this back through the shrinker stretcher a little bit to pull that in, and I had to do that before I made these holes. This one I'm going about it a little bit differently. I'm making it slightly larger, so when we go to fit this into a FC or an FE Holden mudguard, which is FE Holden through from 57 through to 59, give you an idea of the age of the vehicle. When we go to fit this in, we can do some final adjustments on this piece, but I would rather make it a little bit on the larger side by about 2%. So that means that if we need to pull it in, we can do so. If you make it too small, it's not the end of the world. We just put it through the stretching jaws, and basically, see, stretching jaws, and basically that will open the thing back up again. Okay, Harold, so just show us the whole piece all finished, and what do you think of that? Yeah, we don't get too many words there, Harold. We get plenty of bad smells. Okay, so that's Harold's first metal shaping job. It didn't take him too long, and he's done an excellent job. Thanks for watching. Okay, I thought I'd better show you actually what that rust repair section was for. This is a typical rust damage that you would get on a FE Holden. As you can see, the top part of it is pretty well rusted out, as is the outer part. Now, I have quite a few new old stock made by Holden, not made by Rare Spares or any other company. So these are genuine 1957, 58, 59 Holden, made by Holden rust repair sections, and we'll just see how Harold's piece fitted, and it's an exact match. There's a little bit of a bend up needs to be done up on the top because they haven't put that in the factory reproduction part, because they expect you to do that yourself. And you can see why these things rust out. They rust out because all the mud and everything gets flicked up and behind. But that's a pretty good effort for a first attempt, and nothing wrong with that at all. But we'll take it out of there and we'll offer it up onto the car itself. Now, I said I made this a little bit bigger, and there's a reason for that, because I like things to be a snap-in fit. And looking at that, that's not a bad fit at all. It's actually pretty jolly good. Of course, it's not going to fit properly yet because it's all still got the original in there, and it's all bent down and everything, but it looks like that's going to be absolutely spot on. So this is our FE Ute Holden project, and at a later stage we'll be getting into this one. Okay, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this how-to.